many other children, inclusive of yourself. So the roles of mother and the role of daughter, I think, are the ones that have shaped me the most in this life.
So, what is the journey in that? What are these elements that you feel that in those roles have really shaped you in your journey?
Yeah, so Linda Shuma, born 23rd July 1978, just about to get to 50, and I'm waiting for it. Born in Nairobi, brought up in Nairobi in a lot of ways. Though, because my parents are both of coastal descent, 7 months after I was born, my mother had an accident and fell on a staircase of the house. So I was quickly transported to Mombasa to be with my aunt, my grandmother, and my grandfather. So I am a child of the village. I lived with my grandparents and my auntie for close to a year as my mom got treatment for her broken leg. Celebrated my first birthday in Mombasa. And then 3.5 years later, was blessed with a baby sister. I still call her baby sister, Clara. Exactly. Yani, I think my parents were calculating. Yani, 3.5 and 2 days later, my sister was born. And that was an interesting life for me, growing up. Along the way, at about, probably for school purposes, nursery school at the Kenya Science Teachers College, which is now, I can't remember what it is called, but it has since changed names, on Gong Road, opposite, what mall is this? Not Prestige, Junction Mall is the Kenya Science Teachers College, and they had a nursery school there. So that is where I started schooling. After that, I went to St. Hannah's Primary School for Standard 1, which I did for 2 terms before I was promoted to Standard 2, which I did for 1 term.
Wow.
And I passed. But then as I went into Standard 3, my mom transferred me from St. Hannah's into St. Nicholas. And the headmistress at St. Nicholas was like, "You're probably pushing this child a bit too much." And my mom was like, "I'm not doing anything. This is her teachers, you know." So I was taken back and pretty much went back to the class that I should have been, which was Standard 2. Standard 2 through to Standard 5. In Standard 6, I joined St. George's Primary School, which for me was a very big shift because I was moving from a private school, which in this day and age we call group of schools, into a city council school, and the difference was big. From a class of 35 to a class of 52, and you're squeezed, and it was a lot. But there in between as well, my parents separated and divorced. So that's another dynamic in my life that is very, very interesting. My parents separated when I was 8. The divorce finally came through at about 11, when I was about 11. And in very many ways, I am a child of a single mother. So primary school, got to Standard 8, passed, and got called to the school of my choice, which was Moi Girls Eldoret, a very far place from home. If you've never been away from Nairobi, and Mombasa is all that you know, Eldoret is a whole different space. Going to Moigal's Eldoret a year after the first multi-party elections of Kenya in 1993 was yet a very another interesting experience, because after the first multi-party elections, there was the tribal clashes of burnt forests. And the Rift Valley flared for probably about 2 years, 93, 94. There was a lot of flaring of tribal clashes in the burnt forest and in the general Rift Valley. So my year in Moi Girls was a very tense year for my mother and my sister. So I've told you that my parents divorced, so we're just my sister, myself, my mom, very, very close-knit. And I am now the one away in boarding school. And that 1 year was especially hard for my mom. And she was like, I think we need to get you into a day school. And somehow, for some strange reason, every time we're just about to close school, during the April holidays, during the August holidays, there was this big flare-up. And you're not sure. And we would travel on the night bus from Eldoret into Nairobi. And you're not sure, will this Akamba bus, there used to be a bus called Akamba that is not there anymore. So will this Akamba bus get into Nairobi, or will it not? For a mother and her 2 babies, that was very scary. So when I came home after second term, I went for an interview. And I passed the interview at Kianda School, but I was rejected because I was, first of all, not Catholic, Roman Catholic, and I was also from a family of a divorced woman. And that hurt. But when I came home for the December holidays, I then went for an interview. Actually, didn't even go for an interview, but my mother had spoken to the headmistress at the time at Loreto Convent in Msongari, Mrs. Owar, and she accepted me into the school because my grades were good and she thought I would do well in the school. So she accepted me under the circumstances that my mother had given her for wanting to transfer me. And so I did my Form 2 to Form 4 at Loreto Convent in Msongari. Coming out of high school, for me, it was, I needed to pass my math and I needed to get the acceptable overall grade that would get me acceptance into university. And thank God I did. So I had my C plus in math and I had my C plus as a grade. And I then was comfortable to know that, okay, I have university entrance grades. But that is the year, 1997, my mother got an opportunity to travel. And she traveled and relocated to the UK and was able to do that with my sister. I was denied a visa. Kama mmedeniwa visa, msiogope, it happens. I've been denied visa many times. So that was 1997. And at that point, my mom was torn apart because now she was in England with my younger sister. And yet again, I am at this end by myself. What happens? Should we then try and just apply to go as a foreign student to the UK? but it's going to be very expensive. Does she come back home because she doesn't want this family unit to be divided? And I was like, no, you must be crazy, mom. There's no way you can do that, because at that point, the reality was that it made more sense for my mom to stay where she was, because she was then going to be able to afford the school fees to take me through college. If she came back, the kind of money she was earning here, I wouldn't have been able to go through campus. So she did stay where she was, and I ended up enrolling at the United States International University of Africa, USIU, where I pursued a degree in international business administration, minored in hotel and restaurant management. This, despite my desires, when I grow up, what do you want to be? At some point, I had considered studying law. I had considered studying journalism. When I registered for USIU initially, I registered for international relations and somehow got put into business. And I was like, okay, business seems to be what is most marketable at the moment. So I ended up doing international business. Managed to do my degree in 3 years because I didn't take any holidays. I had the luxury of being able to choose my subjects and how to do them. So I was able to do my program in 3 years. Came out of the university, and soon after, no sooner had I put my gown and cap aside, I was pregnant. Very interesting time. When you are the firstborn in a family, when you are the first one to have gone into university in your immediate family, when you are the church girl that is in the praise and worship, in the drama team, in the youth, and then you are pregnant. Salala.
Some people are finding common ground here.
Yeah, so I found myself pregnant. And for me, there was no other choice. I was not making any other choice, even if it was available to me. And 9 months after a pretty rough pregnancy, I was blessed with a bouncing baby boy who is the pride and joy of my life. And that's, getting me into my second role.
And by the way, this is VUC.
This is VUCO, Edmund.
VUCS. Yes.
Also known as Rezaman in the entertainment space. And that has been an interesting journey as well. Was still in Nairobi through all this. In 2008, I got a job that brought me into Mombasa after tammacking for a very long time. And you realize that a degree in this our country does not necessarily translate into job opportunities. Something that probably many of us are struggling with even as we sit here. But I got a job that eventually brought me into Mombasa. So I relocated myself and my son into Mombasa. Having encouraged myself, it's a totally new space. I was turning 30 3 weeks after I moved into Mombasa. And 30 is that pivotal time, eh? Most of us, when we're coming out of school, we're telling ourselves, by the time I'm 30, I want to be married, I want to have my children, I want to have my house. Eh? That's normally where we've set our goals because we think that is very old.
And then you will be happy.
Yeah, shock on me, and I'm sure shock on many of us here, for those of us that have gotten to 30.
We have common ground.
The job is not happening, the house is not happening, the marriage is not happening. But yeah, so I moved to Mombasa, and 3.5 months after I moved here, having thanked God for this job, I resigned from that job. But I resigned from that job because I got here, and for me, it was just extremely toxic. And I was like, this is not good for me. I can't wake up and have a migraine in the morning, cry in the shower in the morning, cry in the shower in the evening, sleep with a headache, and wake up with a headache. So for my mental health, this being especially the Men's Mental Health Month, I took the path that I thought and felt was best for me.
So let me pause you there and ask, what do you mean by the work environment was toxic?
The work environment was toxic because we were not being facilitated to do the work that we should have been doing properly. Mm-hmm. We were not appreciated, not as much as you're doing a good job. We can see what you're doing. Thank you, you know. We know that we haven't given you everything, but we appreciate what you're doing so far. I had my team and myself constantly being harassed, despite performing better than the head office. And it was, for me, it just became too much. So, yes.
All right.
And then began my journey to figure out, now that I've moved from Nairobi, the place and the space of most comfort. And despite the Mombasa being home for me, I still wasn't settling down. It still wasn't comfortable. I still didn't have a social network. I didn't have friends. I hadn't even found a church that I was comfortable to worship at. So that was very, very unsettling. But then I told myself, this is very similar to if I had gone to the UK, gone to America, gone anywhere else, and moved myself. You need to make the most of the situation. Try whatever you can. Because we must, and we are always told that we must, it's important to have tried than not to have tried at all. So I did. I sat and I tried. I started farming at our family shamba and harvested some very beautiful maize and beautiful eggplants and okra and mchicha. And that was a time that gave me some hope. I eventually did find a church that, for me, gave me a lot of grounding. My faith is something that is extremely central to me. and just being anchored in a place where I could be edified spiritually actually just brought me to rest in a lot of ways. I was able to then be able to find friends and family in a lot of ways. I think some of my strongest relationships since I came into Mombasa have stemmed from church. And even as I served in church, I eventually got pulled into a program, the Rites of Passage Experiences, also known as ROPES, which is a program that empowers youth and teens, especially as they transition. A few years back, it was especially as they finished their standard 8 and got into high school. The dynamics with the education system changes have changed, but yeah, so that's what ROPES was about. And I began to interact with young people, aside from those that are in my immediate circle. And in a lot of ways, that role of mentor that you mentioned in the bio that you read as you introduced me, I could say began there. After I stopped teaching and facilitating that program, a friend of mine and myself then began running art and craft classes over the weekend for young children and youth. And we would have over the weekend during the holidays, and we would carry books. And we were doing this within the church space, though it was open to everybody. And we would carry, and for us at that point, it was like, are we able to offer our children something more than what they are experiencing right now? The PS, then I think at that point it was PS3 that had just shikad. So all the children were at PS3. My son had a DS Nintendo.
I'm
And
the
those,
only one who didn't get one, but it's okay.
you are not yet in my sphere.
Okay. Revenge.
So it was, I mean, how else can we engage our children? Because we're looking at it and we're thinking, us guys played kati, we played shake, we had hide and seek. We had so much fun on the streets. And it was holiday time and all the kids were on the streets playing, you know? And everybody would be called, haya kila mtu nyumbani. But the children were and are still experiencing something totally different now because they sit in front of their screens and that's all. So can we engage these children in something different? So we ran that for some time and then stopped. Eventually, in 2014, this same friend of mine, Faith Mukami, who has become more than a friend because she is a sister, a child of my home and me, a child of their home, eventually registered a community-based organization. A community-based organization that was propelled a lot by looking at the mama mbogas of Mombasa. Haya, mnavu, mchunga, mchicha, haya, nazi. And as she's singing that, as she walks through our different neighborhoods, in the hot sun of Mombasa, she has a baby strapped on her back. And for us, one of the first questions became, how do we change the life of this Mama Mboga? Does she really need to walk with her baby in the hot sun? You can imagine. She wakes up, goes to Kongowea, and walks the rest of the day with her baby on her back. For those of us that have carried babies, you know that a baby, even in your laps, is tiring. A baby in a baby carrier is tiring. A baby on your back is also very tiring. So how do we change that life? When you look around, you see lots of children in the middle of the week on a school day that are not in school. Why are they not in school? What is the problem? When you look and you listen to the news, we have Wakali Kwanza, Wajukuu wa Bibi. We have violent extremism at its peak around that time. Radicalization. Why are all these things happening? What is and where is the gap? So those are the questions that we asked ourselves. We eventually registered Women and Girls Empowerment, a community-based organization, which has been running for the last 11 years now, funded by family and friends, with us working as volunteers, because we have never earned a salary from what we do. We have worked with several youth, women, children as our focus audience, and communities that we choose to impact, because those are the most vulnerable. But even as we do that, and even as we continue, so that is one area for volunteerism for me. In 2013, my auntie recruited me into Lions International, an organization that I have served in for the last 12 years this year with a lot of pride. An organization whose motto is "We serve." And Lions, in a lot of ways, goes into different communities in different areas, serving vulnerable people and trying to alleviate and to help and fill in those gaps that are identified. For the club that I serve, one of the biggest projects that we have run is borehole projects that we have dug all the way from Malindi to Lunga. We have a signature project, and I think the only clubs that run a breast cancer awareness campaign very actively. We feed a focus area for some other focus areas for the Lions Club are youth and the environment, which I'm extremely passionate about. And as we talk about environment, I practice very actively a practice called permaculture, which is agriculture in the most organic way, without using pesticides, without using herbicides or chemical herbicides and pesticides, to grow the most organic food. So I'm passionate about food security and sustainability, even at a domestic level. But along with that, So that's another area of volunteerism for me. At this church environment that gave me peace, I have also served for a very long time in different departments. And at some point, I was on a committee that was responsible for development within the church. And at this committee I was the youngest, the second of two women in a committee of about 9, I think. But it is from this committee that I got propelled into the political space that you mentioned.
So we pause there a little bit. The reason why we want to pause there, let us go back a little bit and get some grounding. You were born, all of a sudden, you're being raised by a single mom. What are the foundational lessons you picked from there? Your mom has taken you to a very good school, you're finished, and here it is, you've decided to also become a mom. Though you said you just found yourself in it. Okay? Nilijipata. So,
I should have known that actions have consequences, but hey.
The consequences made you know there are consequences. Anyway, so how has that journey grounded you? You know, we are a sum total. You know, part of our equation is how we were raised. And how has that played a key role to you? Because most of the time when we are looking for identity, when we're looking for purpose, we have to trace back to our roots. So how deep are your roots to the person that you are today?
Oh gosh, my roots are deep. Very, very grounded in a lot of ways on my maternal side more than my paternal side. Though I carry the names of my paternal grandmother, a name that I love, Mariva, which is milk in Taita. But because of that attachment and having my mother being the key and active parent in my life, I talked about having my grandfather take me and stay with me. So when I came to Mombasa at 7 months, I somehow have some very fond memories of riding in my grandfather's Mercedes Benz. That was a nice
mulikuwa na chums, eh? Mercedes are 7 months.
I don't think that it was necessarily a matter of prestige so much as my grandfather loved good things. And he took very good care of me. So I remember him being the one taking me to clinics and coming from clinics, and we would go by Marikiti. There used to be a place that has only just recently been bomolewed that sold chauro. Chauro is chefda. In our local lingo here, we call chefda chauro. So they would sell chauro and vimto. And for me, that is such a sweet memory, even when I think about my grandfather. My closeness to my grandfather, I saw him 2 weeks before he died. And when I had a son, I was compelled to name him after my grandfather, Edmund Vuko. be as it were, my son carries a lot of the characteristics of my grandfather. My son loves style and fashion. He is the life of a party anywhere he goes. He is charming, just like my grandfather was. And for me, that is what rooted. When I think and you ask me, how did that being raised by a single mother and what did it mean for me? My mother is a powerhouse. She's a powerhouse, yet very, very gentle. Very quiet, very observant, very loving, with lots of friends. Today, one of her friends is here to cheer me on. And she makes friends across different ages, across different tribes and different races. And I think you can attest to that as well. She is...
I need to confirm my attest.
She is the one person, when you think of an Energizer bunny that says, and never dies, that is my mommy. There's nothing too hard for her, nothing too difficult. I tell people that I went to good schools, not because my mother was a rich woman, but because she was determined and continues to be determined that her children have the very best in this life. My school fees was paid in installments from nursery school all the way to masters. My school fees was always paid in installments. It was never paid lump sum. So it's that determination, that strength to know. And she always says there's nothing that is impossible. There's nothing to fear. My mother is the kind of person that would put us into the car on a Saturday, despite us living off Ngong Road in a place called Kimbo, in a place tucked behind a kaslam. She would drive us into Karen and into Lavington to see, to aspire, and to appreciate. When she had the money, she would take us into a good restaurant and have us eat fine meals. Though we ate really fine meals at home too, caused us to learn, even from home, how to eat with a fork and a knife. Because that is who, she has big dreams for us. And her motto is that you must never be intimidated. We are all human with equal opportunities. Not necessarily equal opportunities, but with the ability to attain whatever we would desire to attain. So that is the kind of grounding for me and the kind of rooting that has propelled me and kept me moving in life.
Okay. Again, I take you back a little bit. You're about to change schools, you get rejected. Okay. I experienced about 2 rejections in your story. And so actually rejection, and it is tied to the divorce, where you're coming from, and church issues. How did that shape you, and how has it empowered you to handle such kind of rejections? And I'm asking that because I find those questions asked a lot in the current environment where how do you handle rejection? So how did that shape you? Because it kind of started when you were pretty young. And some of the reasons were not your making. It's like you're being punished for other people's mistakes.
The rejections, in a lot of ways, act as impetus to propel me further and to just prove. Because unfortunately, the stereotype out here is that huyo ni mtoto wa single mother. That is the way she is. Or huyo ni single mother, ako hivyo tu. So it's without finding out how did this person end up in this space. In the case of rejection, I mean, and I could add another one inside there. When I took my son for baptism, he was almost not baptized because yet again, he was the child of an unwed mother. And for me at that point, the question to the priest was, now that I had already fornicated and had this baby, why are we punishing this child? Is it the fault of the child to have been born? Or would have the better thing for me to have done be to abort so that I don't have a child that would face this rejection, and so that it is never known that anyway, I had had this premarital sex. Yeah. He was eventually baptized on that very day. But those rejections, for me, become a thing to push for better, to push, to prove to the world that indeed, like Jesus, the cornerstone that is rejected, the stone that was rejected becomes the cornerstone. There is a lot of good that can come out of any of us. And we find ourselves in different circumstances, as you're saying, not always because of our own actions. It's as a consequence of somebody else's actions. But the world is also very judgmental and not caring to find out. Should somebody stay in a violent relationship until they die, just so that they continue to be called Mrs. Or not? What does somebody do if they find themselves having a child out of wedlock? Should we then become advocates for abortion so that then there are no children from unwed and single mothers? I could have been a child of a single mother because my father had died. But outside in the neighborhood, when somebody sees you taking care of your children alone, without even knowing why, we pass a lot of judgment. And it's having the courage to just know that we need to prove the stereotypes wrong.
All right. So I think this is where I also pause and talk to each one of us that for you to become a great leader, you need to avoid bias, judgment, prejudice. you need to start seeing people for who they are. You need to start seeing yourself for who you are. And if you're really interested in somebody or knowing about somebody, find the story behind the person. Because at the end of the day, we are all stories. And most of us, we've denied ourselves blessings simply because we have bias in front of our eyes, we have judgment in front of our eyes, and we have closed a lot of doors in our lives. And in the issue of rejection, I think when you go for a game drive, there is always a route. But one thing that I have always loved, actually I learned this from my mentor, is there are animals you will never see until you detour. You will never see them until you detour. So we have the route, but we detour. So some of those rejections are opportunities for you to detour. Just like a river, the course was to flow forward. It gets there, it finds a barrier. What does it do? It detours, but it keeps on flowing. Yeah, but not sitting down and having a pity party and playing songs of vocal as you enjoy the pity party, is it? Okay.
Because songs will not allow you to have a pity
now,
party.
I'll fast forward to where you had paused. I remember where I paused you. There is this church you went, and that is the one that got you into politics. I want to know that church. I want to go to join that development department as the youngest young man there, so that I can branch to politics. Nevertheless, maybe now we go and hit play on that part of the story.
Great, yeah. So serving on this church committee, and at some point, I'm asked, at some point we get into this meeting, we are starting this meeting, and somebody says, you know, Hassan Omar's team, this is 2017. It is just before the elections. And this guy says, Hassan Omar's team is looking for a deputy governor candidate. They're looking for a woman. They're looking for a Christian. They're looking for somebody of Mijikenda descent. And then I jokingly said, because, I mean, it would just be banter at this committee meeting. I jokingly said, I think I qualify. What else does that person need? It's a degree I have. Hizo zingine I don't have a problem with.
And then it's from USIU.
A very good institution, I might say. So, and it passes. And then 2 weeks later, I get a call. And I'm told, remember that conversation we had 2 weeks ago? Would you actually be interested in running for this position? I was like, hey, wait a minute. You want what? Politics, me, Linda Shuma. Hey, this is too serious, man. But then I was like, you know what? At that point, I had constantly been so upset with the administration of the time in Mombasa. I was just like constantly, and I kept on saying every time I would be anywhere, I would be like, I just want 5 minutes with this guy. I mean, all I need is 5 minutes with this guy to tell him that he's very upsetting. And at that point, my conviction was, you have kept on saying that you want 5 minutes. This is your opportunity. This is a possible opportunity to your 5 minutes. And at this point, it was that I needed to go in for an interview. And they were interviewing people. And they would then make a decision. So I was like, anyway, it's only to go for an interview. What do I have to lose? Nothing. So the next day I was told, be ready at this time, be around this place. Okay. Sawa. Eventually, okay, we are ready for you, come in. And I went into the interview. So I'd never met Hassan Omar. The only person I knew was the guy that I sat with on the church committee. So I walked in, and I wasn't expecting to find Hassan Omar himself. So I walked in, and I found Hassan Omar at the table. Like, okay, let's go for it. And that was an intense, I've never had an interview that long. It was a 3-hour interview or 3-hour conversation. Very, very intense. And after 3 hours, I walked out and went for a Chama meeting. And like 3 hours later, I receive a phone call. And the phone call, I picked up the phone. Hi, Linda. This is Hassan. Okay. Now you sit up a bit straighter. I'm just calling to let you know that you are the successful person for this post. So I need to see you tomorrow morning. Can you get this and this ready? Can you do this and this and this? And I'm not seeing Judy, but Judy was part of that campaign team at that point. So in 6 hours, my life did a flip.
From 5 minutes. You wanted just 5 minutes.
Just 5 minutes.
You got 3 hours. Then after another 3 hours,
yes,
you are
but the 3
becoming...
hours, this is still not the person that I need to be addressing. But it is giving me a platform to be able to address, give me my 5 minutes. And I found myself in the midst of the murky world of Kenyan politics. On that 13th day, I think 13th day of May 2017. And it flipped and changed a lot of things for me. Because all of a sudden, I am getting into this space that I don't know. The reason I'm getting into this space is because of my community-based organization work, the Lions, my membership in Lions. And that was pretty much what got me into that space. And now I am having to stand before thousands, millions of Mombasa residents with the possibility of being the one that makes or breaks the lives of every person that lives and comes into Mombasa. A very pivotal point for me. Be as it were, we went through the campaign, a very paradigm shifting experience, running for office in what is probably the most politically charged environment. I keep on saying, and I think in a lot of ways, Mombasa is probably even more charged than Nairobi, the capital city. Looking at things in a very different way. I mean, my community work had taken me into seeing lots of poverty. My political journey took me even further. Because for Mombasa, the beauty is only on the main roads. beyond our main roads, we are a sorry state. And going and engaging with that which is our sorry state continuously, every day, for 3 months, takes a toll on your spirit. The kind of things you experience are life-shifting things. I tell people that on the 4th of August, 2017, at Mamangina waterfront, I broke a rib. Could have died, but survived it because I was covered. Coming out of that, by the time the campaign finished on Saturday, the 5th. On the 6th of August, I had no voice. I couldn't even say hi. God gave me just enough grace to take me through that campaign. So, went to the elections. And came out of that and went into an election petition. In a lot of ways, I ended up being the face of the Hassan Omar Linda Shuma election petition of the elections of 2017, with a decision made in February of 2018. But in the meanwhile, I had also faced a life-threatening something away from the 4th of August. I also faced a life-threatening health condition in October of 2017. So that for me was life-shifting as well, with internal bleeding that took place for more than 36 hours. But was able to come out of it. But through the election, this life-threatening health condition, and just trying to get back into the rhythm of life post the elections, took me another 6 months. I did not feel human until June of 2018. I came out of that and continued with my community-based organization work, which has since grown in a lot of ways, though also quietened in a lot of ways. So Women and Girls works within the coastal region. If you know the demographics and dynamics of the coast, you know that people live in Kwale, work in Mombasa. Others work in Mombasa, live in Kilifi. Others live in Mombasa, work in Kilifi. So it's a very fluid 3 counties. And we have thus found ourselves working along the coast, because even for the kids, a child is probably at Bamburi Primary, but goes to Kasidi Secondary in Rabai. So things like that. So you end up working inter-county and just operating in those spaces. Women and Girls has worked around education, so we're very passionate about education. I am very passionate about education. Have sponsored children. We have established community libraries and homework centers in Mombasa, in Bamburi, Mtwapa, Likoni, Vishakani, not Vishakani, Kashani, and Vikwatani. That's where we have community libraries that have been developed and established with the help of Women and Girls Empowerment. We started the libraries because as we went into the schools mentoring, we realized we were going into largely private schools that have minimal, if any, facilities. Schools that are buildings that are work in progress. So they have no labs, no libraries, no anything. Where teachers change every month because somebody comes in as an untrained teacher, teaches for 1 month, gets a job and moves on. And it's hard. We are working with vulnerable communities, children that are stemming from Kisauni, Bamburi, because that was our focus and domicile area. And I tell people, I mean, for me, I have gone into a mentoring session and had to ask for probationary services to come with me for assessment. Because you go into a session and these young men that you have been working with for a whole year tell you in your face, madam, tukikupata pabaya, kama una mbili na mi sina, nitakubanza tu na ukuta. And you know that the threat is real. And you are thus obligated to bring in the authorities that are relevant for that. So I have had to call probationary services to just come and do assessment of schools and things like that. Mentoring because, unfortunately, as parents, we seem to be raising children without walking with our children. Somebody needs to fill in that gap. So I have found myself being very passionate about mentoring and walking with people, especially the youth. Life skills, and when we talk about mentoring, then there's also the aspect of life skills and soft skills. Just this week, I have picked up a new learning that I am up to, which is glass cutting. And the young guy that has been teaching me and my friends to do the glass cutting. So we're having this conversation. He's a rugby player. He is an artist. And he says, yeah, there were some guys that came and they were like, they are willing to take us to the UK for training for rugby opportunities. And I'm like, okay, so do you have your passport? And he's like, no. And so I went into this whole lecture thing because for me, the one thing I tell everybody, and I want to tell all of us here, always have a valid passport, whether you will travel with it or not. Always have a valid driving license, whether you will own a car or not. Have a valid yellow fever certificate because you need it to access different countries as you travel. And opportunities pass us simply because we are not prepared for them. So for each of us, driving license, passport, yellow fever. And that's a life skill.
Some don't even have an ID card, ilipotea.
Sayo. I didn't have an ID as well for over 6 years past my 18th birthday, but that was because of the complications of our systems. Yeah, children and development of talent, sports, creative arts, and it can be anything. 2021, I found myself in Poland for a duration of 6 weeks, having been part of an art festival that took place in Kilifi. A couple of years ago, when part of our programs as we develop children, we had an artist that would come in, and the late Atanas, God bless and rest his soul in peace, made me, and he would always say, Madam, you need to pick up I think you can be very good at this art. And even as I didn't believe myself, I started painting and I started just consuming my creative juices. And that's how I ended up being part of the Duos Festival. That was a European Union funded program that ran with artists from the coast, Poland, and Italy, interacting and being part of something that I would never have thought of. Going to Poland, a country that I'd never thought of. And I rightfully call myself an artist now because I have been part of an exhibition that ran for 12 weeks at the museum in Szczecin, which is one of the border towns in Poland. A very exciting experience. Smack in the middle of COVID, man. Imagine I had a break to run away from Kenya in the middle of COVID and just see what COVID was like somewhere else. Because I'm passionate about reading, as much as I don't read as much as I should today. A couple of years ago, I came across an idea of street libraries. And I know when I posted it on Facebook, everyone was like, Linda, I think you really need to stop being such a romantic in your head and just fantasizing all these things. Street library, hizo vitabu zitaibwa. I don't think that thing will survive. And I was like, no, I'm going to try it. So in 2021, I did start a street library as one of my heart projects. And 4 years later, the street library is actually working. It is right outside my house. Somebody deposited a book inside that street library even before I put in books of my own. And I think as human beings, we actually have a lot of good intention and a lot of goodwill, despite our wanting to doubt each other. And that library, it has never been vandalized. Every once in a while, I find people have deposited books. Sometimes it runs empty. I put in more books, but it is working. A friend of mine then put up another street library somewhere beyond Ezekiel's church in Mavueni, in a place called Viambani, it's a pretty remote village. And that street library there is working, with the children depositing books and bringing back the books as life goes on. So there's all these things. We've talked about trees. And together with my partner, we have planted so far, in the last 2 years, 14,000 trees out in Kwale as part of the conservation, because it is important that we actually conserve our environment. We are working on conserving the banks of River Ramisi, which are very heavily eroded because of the agricultural activity that is happening further upstream away from where we are. And for me, it's, can we do what we can do with what we have anywhere that we are?
Thank you. Sisi leo ni wachoyo wa makofi.
Wanasikiza.
They are listening.
They're digesting.
Okay. Let's give a round of applause. Diana, I can see you. Okay. Challenge each other. That is good. So I have to acknowledge our time is far much spent, and that means we will take our tea break down to 20 minutes. But I got loads of questions to ask. So for each question, Linda, 50 seconds for each one of them. I have 3. Then we do the quick fire. And then we close. Okay. So the first one is, over the years, what lessons have stuck with you in your journey of leadership and service?
In my journey of leadership and service, the lesson that has stuck with me is to work with whatever I have. Little or much, just work with what you have to be able to start. Because otherwise, if you're waiting for, a lot is needed. And if you're going to wait for a lot, then nothing will happen.
Okay. Now for this one, I would like you to look at that camera.
All right.
Max, I'm okay? Yeah. So for this one, you've quite a lot of multiple definitions to who you are today. What will you say to a young woman who feels like she has multiple passions and even undecided of what to pursue and doesn't know where to begin?
I think I would start with work with what you have now to be able to live out the passion of the time. Our interests, our hobbies, our passions in life could constantly change or could constantly remain the same. But even as we chase those passions and dreams, I think the most important thing is also to figure out, why are we chasing and carrying out the passions that we do?
Okay. I know you've done Ubuntu. We've been together in the program, only that we don't have time to talk about it. But this one is related to that. What legacy, if today was your last day on earth, what legacy do you want to leave in Mombasa, where you were born, and Africa at large? Because I know you work in Africa at large.
The legacy that I want to leave is one of impact. When I think through what my life story should be at the end. I want it to be said that Linda impacted me positively.
Okay. Now, is there something you really have in your heart and you would like to share? And you feel I was not able even to touch a surface on it, but it is screaming out.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Under the circumstances.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then we do our quick fire and then we call it a day. Okay. So I have, I think, 5 questions. These ones is on top of your mind. So the first one is, what is the one word that defines your leadership style?
Inclusivity.
A book or a mentor that changed your perspective?
The Bible.
One African woman you deeply admire and why?
Arikana of Zimbabwe, because she's bold and vivacious. She is, and she's passionate about Africa. She loves the continent.
Tea or coffee?
Tea.
A quote or proverb that always grounds or inspires you?
Do unto others as you would have done to yourself.
What is the one daily habit that keeps you centered in your purpose?
Prayer.
Yeah, so that has been the story of Linda Mariwa Shuma. When I look at this story, nowadays I'm very fond of African proverbs. If you read my post, you will find an African proverb. And there is a Bantu, hi cousins, there is a Bantu proverb that says, you learn how to cut down trees by cutting them down. Stories of significance is not just about you finding common ground with the speaker that we've had, Linda, and saying, oh, I've also experienced that. But it is using that story to learn how to cut down your trees by cutting them down. So if there are lessons that you've picked, go and practice and live them. Because if you don't, then you can't cut down any tree. And since you are a Christian and you talked about church, there is a Bible verse that is Hebrews chapter 5 verse 14 that says, but solid food is for the mature, who by constant use have trained themselves. So the only way you can stop taking milk, which is the meaning of the name Mariwa, and start taking solid food, you need to mature up. And you mature up by cutting them down, the trees. And ladies and gentlemen, that is the story of none other than Linda Mariwa. Until the next speaker, that was another powerful story of significance. I hope you are living challenged, inspired, and reminded that your story too holds the ground to inspire and transform others. Do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Leave us a review if this story moved you, and most importantly, share this episode with your network. Until next time, lead with vision, move with purpose, and inspire with impact. See you next episode. Your story matters too.